are now playing with the download. They are not abducting people to alter them. They're altering people. They're altering the download. Not on everyone, because they're doing beta tests. The first beta test started around in the early 1960s and went on for 20 years. These were the Indigos. They ran a beta test. Okay. What you mean they ran a beta test? Well, they decided to modify a small segment of human population. We have something called a mechanical brain. We can take, open up our bicycle, buy it, and it comes in a box. We can dump the box out and semi figure out how it goes together because we have a mechanical brain. What they started in 1960 with a small portion of humanity, they started the Indigo experiment. And they made a few modifications. And Indigos was kids that was born with an electromechanical brain. And these kids was different. Those kids, when they started to get a little up in age, they could take their Game Boy apart or any electronic piece and they could stare at it and they could figure out how it worked. And they could add parts to their Game Boys and they was adding to, they just, they could just figure out electronic stuff by themselves. To us, we look at electronic stuff and we don't see nothing. But to those kids with their electromechanical brains, they started to see things because they were seeing the world differently. And with their electromechanical brain, they also was slightly more intelligent. They was not, they came here and we was called coming along and getting in line, and we're like sheep. We like to follow the herd. When those Indigos came, they didn't really like following the herd. When they was in elementary school and kindergarten, they really didn't like to play with the other kids. That's the reason a lot of these kids started to be signed HDHD and all these other letters they came up with, wanted to put them on Ritalin, this and that, because they wasn't that sociable. They liked to play by themselves. They was doing things. And they was fascinated by our world, but they didn't like the structure of our world. They didn't like everything had to be in straight lines. They wanted to go their own way. And a lot of these kids was brilliant. Okay. But with the download they was not given a spirit guide to go along with this. And as these kids was using their mind and trying to figure out the world on their own, not staying with the other kids. A lot of them stayed in their room in the basement like me doing things they liked it to be by themselves a lot because they was working on their stuff. They was in their garages making computers and everything like that. They wasn't out there playing basketball and football with the other kids. Okay. But since they didn't have a spirit guide, a lot of these kids got into mischief. They was using, since they could figure things out electronically, they could figure out, hey, I figured out how to get money out the ATM. I figured out how to, break into the school computer. Hey, I figured out how to do this. I figured out how to change my grades at school. I figured out all kind of stuff. They became the hackers. But a lot of these kids also started, started Silicon Valley, Napster, all these little people that was creating all these things, Bill Jobs and Gates and all of them. They never went to school. They just knew all this stuff. But since they lacked a spirit guide, a lot of them had a negative lean. Not all of them. And when these kids first came about, They was around for 20 years. The experiment ran from 1960 to 1980. Okay. People thought these people was really smart, and when these kids grow up they're going to find a cure to cancer, they're going to do this, but these kids wasn't interested in finding a cure to cancer. A lot of these kids can't had a hard time holding a regular job because sitting around at work or in school and listening to the teacher for, oh my gosh, they can understand that stuff in 20 minutes. They don't want to sit in school all day. They don't want to go to college for 4 years. They can figure this stuff out in a year. Why you got to go to school for 4 years? A lot of them got into bad stuff. And when the government catches these kids, they give them a choice. You can go to jail or you can work for the government. Okay. And that's where a lot of these hackers and things come from. You got government hackers, you got the bad hackers, you got a lot of them. These are the indigos, but they have a mind which is electromechanical. And but you know, they some of them was able to find their way. Some of them made a lot of money. Okay. But a lot of them was just into, they're kind of rebellious, and they had a hard time following the groove of society. They didn't want to live that Mayberry RFD life and go the regular path of most people. So they was different and unique. That was the first group. And these people are now parents today. Some of them are still rebellious, okay, doing their own thing. That was the first of the beta tests. Then they did the next test. The first test was for 20 years, 1960 to 1980.